On this episode of Dealing the Cards, we're going to talk through different front office and coaching overhauls. So there's been the continued changes from Chaim Bloom's influence in the front office, as well as some of the forecasted changes to the coaching staff in terms of hitting coach, and then also a former Cardinal joining the coaching staff. Do we like these moves? Do we think they're going to be impactful for the major league roster in 2025? And then in the case of the front office changes, is this impactful, or how impactful is this for the direction of the Cardinals moving forward? We're going to talk about all this in this episode and more on Dealing the Cards. Hey, Andrew. You're probably elated right now with the Dodgers in the World Series, but most Cardinal fans, I think most of our attention is on the World Series right now. I think most of the conversation in Cardinal Nation is more on the coaching staff and front office changes. And so just a brief rundown of all the changes that have happened this past week, and then we'll get into them individually, starting with the coaching side. But obviously, Branden Brown brought in as the new hitting coach for the St. Louis Cardinals, replacing Turner Ward. Jon Jay has been added to their coaching staff, with Willie McGee shifting toward the front office. On the front office side of things, we're going to talk about Rob Cerfolio. I believe that's how you say his last name. Being hired as the assistant GM of player development and performance, coming over from the Cleveland Guardians. You did have a Matt Slater step down from his role, which we'll talk about that. And for people who don't know his name. So a lot of changes this past week in between the National League Championship and ALCS Championship Series and then the World Series. Let's start on the coaching side of things, Andrew. We talked about a couple different names for the Cardinals hitting coach potentially, but in general, it's kind of hard to know like what directions would the Cardinals go with something like that. And then we got the news of Branden Brown, who we could talk through the history of him a little bit, but I think it's kind of left a sour taste in some fans' mouths, and some kind of wondering like, why would you hire someone that got fired from his last gig / wasn't super successful when it comes to team results? Andrew, when you saw the Branden Brown hiring, what was your reaction?
Well, initially I saw some of the tea leaves that were being sprinkled by some of the writers that were like, hey, the Cardinals are interested in Branden Brown amongst a list of other names.
Also, I was on this back in August, so I will take my
So I wasn't like shocked when it happened, but when I first saw the tea leaves, I was really confused as to why the Cardinals would go after. The Cardinals are really bad at PR, right? And like they're just not gonna they need to handle like fan relations a little bit better, because it seems like they make these moves, they don't really explain them, and they look bad, right? Like last year when they brought in Lynn and Gibson before Sonny Gray, everyone was like, these moves are terrible, us included. Like, we'll take the blame for that as well. But at the end of the day, like when you saw the game plan that they were going with for their rotation, it wasn't terrible. But this seems like another one of those moves where like you're bringing in a guy that is in an organization just with a historically bad offense, and the Cardinals have a historically bad offense in their own right. Situational hitting, just terrible. The Mariners all around just had a historically bad offense. They were number one. They had probably the number one rotation in all of baseball, and they still missed the playoffs because their offense was just that bad. And that's not a good look, right? I'm not saying that he was necessarily involved in a lot of the players that they bring in falling off, because he wasn't there at the time. But guys like Teoscar Hernandez go to the Mariners and they look completely lost at the plate, and then they leave, and then they become their old self or better or whatever. And it's like, if you pick up a Mariners hitter who's on an expiring contract and they have somewhat of promise, they're probably going to be good, right? And you look at guys like Julio Rodriguez, J.P. Crawford, guys who are meant to be decent bats. Was it Mitch Garver that they signed to DH for them from the Rangers last year?
They traded for Mitch Garver in the Robbie Ray trade, but Mitch Garver is someone that was pretty open in public after Brown was let go, that he was a big fan of Brown. So
yeah, but Goldie and Arenado were big fans of Turner Ward, so I'm not really like, I don't know if that's like necessarily exactly who we should be taking this information from. And like this could end up being a good hire, right? Like Brown might have not fit in with Seattle, and like he has had some success, like with the Marlins. That team made the playoffs, but their lineup wasn't that good. But when you look at some of the names that were in it, you can understand, right? Like their best hitter that year was Luis Ariz, who, I mean, he won the batting title 3 years in a row, but other than that, like, is he really good for that much more offensively? And have some other guys on that team that made the playoffs. I don't know. We'll see what becomes of a lot of those Marlins bats. But looking strictly at his time in Seattle, it doesn't look great from a PR standpoint. I don't know too much about like what his hitting philosophy is. I wasn't in the press conference yesterday. We're not members of the media, contrary to some of your belief. But I don't know. We'll see what happens, I guess, next season. If this Cardinals team looks like the Mariners, then we're going to be like, well, that's tough. But also there's a chance that with Ollie as somewhat of a lame duck manager until Chaim Bloom fully takes over, coaches might not really want to come here. So some of those coaches that people were looking at might not have wanted to come to St. Louis because this is a transition period, and some coaches don't really want to be a part of that and just have to deal with it.
Yeah, I think overall the Branden Brown side of things, I have a hard time really taking a whole lot from the offensive production of the teams because the two teams, which there's a third team that we haven't mentioned yet, which I do think is an encouraging side of it, but the two teams that he was like the official either hitting coach for in Miami or the offensive coordinator, which is a weird position, and bench coach for the Mariners are two clubs that are like in the last like 5, 6, 7 years are just always bad offensively. And so, I mean, I don't know what to take from a hitting coach that goes into a situation where Luis Ariz is your best hitter in Miami and the rest of the roster is pretty, not great. Obviously, you go to Seattle and you've got Julio Rodriguez. That's great. JP Crawford's pretty good. Had a great year the year before, but like overall, that was also one of the worst, like least talented offensive groups in baseball. So there's not a lot there that I take from it. Also, too, like Teoscar Hernandez going and being good for the Dodgers. Like Brant Brown wasn't there when Teoscar was
I know
there.
that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, so like people like this, so like there wasn't like it's hard for you. Like some people are like, well, Julio was great the year before, and then he was bad with Brant Brown. I'm like, well, okay, so is that Brant Brown or did Julio Rodriguez have a bad year? Like I think it's just really, 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 really easy to blame the hitting coach, which, to be fair, we talked about like Turner Ward needs to go. But I feel like we talked quite a bit about, at least on my end, like it's hard to know what Turner Ward did and didn't do. And at some point, you're judged by the results. But like Brant Brown being fired after 2 months of his role with the Mariners is kind of weird to me. And then it felt more like a panic move than it felt like, oh, like he's the actual issue, because you saw a few months later, then they fired their actual bench coach. They fired their actual, they fired their actual hitting coach and they fired their manager later that summer because it didn't get better when Branden Brown was gone. He did get a strong recommendation from Skip Schumacher. So if people are huge Skip Schumacher fans and Branden Brown was loved by Skip Schumacher, you would think that's a pretty strong endorsement. Also by Jon Jay as well. And again, like specifically with Jon Jay, I don't think he would heavily endorse a hitting coach that he thinks is a bad hitting coach going to his next job. Like, why would he sign up to be with a guy that he thinks is bad at his job? Overall, I'll say I don't really know what to tell people other than we'll see what happens, right? And then even then, it's like, well, okay, Jordan Walker's hitting really well. Is that Brant Brown or is Jordan Walker just in a groove? Like, I don't know. Some of the things I appreciated, I posted a story on RR back in August about Brant Brown because when he started doing some interviews, I think with Foul Territory, I was starting to at least like, okay, at that point, Ollie was on the hot-ish seat. I think most people thought he'd stay, but like if there was a world where they brought in Skip Schumacher, it would make sense that he'd bring in a former hitting coach as well. There was stuff that he mentioned in that interview that I think is really interesting about his hitting philosophy and the kind of hitting coach he is, and like his experience in Seattle versus Miami versus the Los Angeles Dodgers, which the Dodgers had him around for 5 years as an assistant hitting coach. And I think there was what was the other role he had with them? I might have just been assistant hitting coach. But they had him around for 5 years. And if he was bad at his job, I don't think the Dodgers would have him as the assistant hitting coach for 5 years. he's talked openly about his experience at the Dodgers being super eye-opening, and that when he got to the Dodgers, he really learned a ton about hitting development, about the data that goes behind it, the analytics and how to synthesize that. And something that's really interesting he brought up in that is that basically he was being introduced to all this information, and he found himself at times saying, okay, that's too much. Like, how do I get to a point where I synthesize that information and get it to the right hitters and help them to understand it but not overwhelm them? And I think it attests to what John Mozeliak said about him in the press conference this week, that he's basically in between a Turner Ward and a Jeff Albert, where Jeff Albert, super analytical approach, sports science, the art of hitting, how to develop hitters, all that kind of stuff. And he was a hitting coach too. Turner Ward is old school, not as much about the analytics and data type of guy. And you're going to see Brant Brown as something in between. So,
well, if the Dodgers developed a great hitter like Tommy Edman, maybe Brant Brown will teach the Cardinals how to develop. Oh, wait, never mind.
Oh boy. We'll get to Tommy Edman later, I think. But so my overall thoughts on Brant Brown, whatever. Like I'm not mad about it. Some people are really mad about it. I'm not. I'm also not gonna sit here and tell you it was the best hire of the offseason, because I don't know. We'll see. And anyone who tells you they do know, I think most people don't know. There's probably very few people that you're gonna be hearing podcasts or writing that are gonna be able to tell you an actual like good take about Brant Brown other than the data and the information we have publicly. There's a good question from Bill Downton in the chat. Like, do you know who made the hire? So coaching hires, I think this is all influenced by Bloom, but I think Mo probably takes the lead a little bit more on these. On the front office side of things, I think you could probably give a little more, or for sure you can give more credence to Bloom about the Rob Cerfolio one. So we'll get to that. But then one last thing that you brought up, Andrew, that I want to just reiterate is I do think it's really hard to think about adding significant candidates to this club right now for like a role like hitting coach when they don't know if the manager is the manager of the future, right? Like if Bloom decides to clear house a little bit and bring in his own coaching staff or his own manager, like probably not going to see the same hitting coach in place. You might not see the same pitching coach in place. Like a lot of those managers want their guys in there. So I don't know like who the best hitting coach candidates were that were out there and if they were actually available to the Cardinals. But one that was available that was sought after by other teams that did decide to come to St. Louis is Jon Jay. I think that's pretty encouraging that he was a guy that Miami fired their whole coaching staff, but wanted Jon Jay back, but gave him the ability to go look elsewhere. There were other offers from other clubs out there that Jon Jay could have taken, and they would have probably been more official roles, like a bench coach, first base, third base coach, like something like that. And instead, Jon Jay's coming on the staff in a very undefined role. So like he's the outfield defensive guy, but he's also going to kind of fill in other areas. So he's not like the bench coach or the first base or third base coach, which are more like, I don't know, like the more official titles in baseball, but he desired to come to St. Louis. And so he turned down other opportunities to be here. But you get into the former Cardinal territory, right, Andrew? And you get a lot of feelings about that. Some people always think about bringing in a former Cardinal. Other people don't like that. When you saw the Jon Jay news, did you have any major responses to that at all?
I mean, his role hasn't even been defined yet, has it? So like, I don't know if
there's not like an official title other than a coach.
He's just a coach.
But Mo described it as he would for sure help with outfield defense. But then what appealed to him about the role was that he gets to kind of help with a lot of things. So he's not in one lane, but he can kind of bounce around. So outfield defense for sure, but then there's other things he'll help with that will probably change. So I don't think they're going to come out and a month around give a full job description. I think that's kind of his role as outfield defense plus other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's taking over for Willie McGee, who is the outfield like coordinator or something. I don't know. But he was the only one who was helping Jordan Walker with his defensive drills. So that's unfortunate. He's still staying with the organization, though, in a advisor type of role. I think whatever Yachty had that he didn't end up coming to do. Do we know if Yachty actually still retains that role for next season, or is like, I don't know.
That's a great question. That has not been talked about to my knowledge. So, Willie McGee was okay. Well, yeah, Willie McGee filled a very similar role as assistant coach, like Jon Jay. So not like an official outfield coordinator or anything. But then again, Mo talked about with Willie McGee, so we can combine these conversations. Is that McGee's like 62, 63, 64 now? He wasn't
fired. He just didn't want to travel with the team every day, which is fair.
So he can be with the St.
Yeah.
Louis guys and work with them, but he can also go to Single A Palm Beach and help there, or he can take the week off if he wants to and not help and be with his family. Like,
Yeah.
it's a lot more flexible now for McGee. So Jon Jay basically fills in that role.
Yeah. So like instead of really subtracting, you're just adding another coach to the staff. And I don't know, Jon Jay, like people in Miami seem to like him a lot, like enough to for other teams to go after him for coaching roles. It makes sense that he would want to be back here, considering he won in 2011 and was with the team for quite a while after that. I don't know. I'm just glad that they're adding more coaching staff. Hopefully, they add more Jon Jay bobblehead night. Sure. I mean, hey, the DeWitts have a lot of promotions coming up for season ticket holders that they're really going to like. So maybe that's one of those. I don't know. So there's not too much to be excited about with coaching changes. There's not like too much to be not excited about. Like it's really hard to determine what the coaches are or aren't doing for the players. Hopefully, Jon Jay maybe like has the secret to mastering right field defense for Jordan Walker. I doubt it. It seems like there needs a lot more than just one coach to fix that sort of problem with the organization. But hey, getting another guy in there is definitely a start. And yeah, it's not. It's put it this way: it's better than signing Jon Jay back as a player, which they would have done last year.
Yeah, I would say to be yeah, that's a good point. To be fair, there was like Jordan Walker made substantial improvements defensively when he would be in St. Louis for a prolonged period of time. Part of that's because he's working with Willie McGee all the time. And then when he would go to Memphis, he would regress defensively because there wasn't someone there to work with him. So like again, I don't know how much of a difference Jon Jay and Willie McGee is coaching wise, but it's like if Walker's in St. Louis next year, he's going to have Jon Jay working with him all the time, like Willie McGee was. And when Willie McGee was working with Jordan Walker all the time, things were getting better. Andrew, to your point, and then we can keep moving the conversation. I think like overall, I don't have a lot of hot takes here with the coaching staff, and I don't think it matters a ton after that. In all honesty, the thing that I want our conversation to really focus on, because I think it's the bigger deal right now, is the front office changes, because I think that is a sign of real change happening in St. Louis. And these will be the people who make the decisions about a major league coaching staff, about the major league roster going forward, that actually matter. And so, sure, the current coaching staff, it's what it is, but like, is Branden Brown going to be the hitting coach in 2027, 2028? I don't know. Is Jon Jay going to be around in 2027, 2028? I don't know. Does their influence now matter for the young guys on the roster? Sure, for sure. Like, I'm not going to act like that doesn't matter, but I do think if I'm picking an area where I want to see some home run hires right now, it's not the hitting coach. It's not Willie McGee's replacement. It is the assistant GM of player development performance. It's the next Pobo. It's that kind of stuff. And that's where I see the Cardinals making their best hires right now. So we'll get into that after we do a couple of thank yous to some of our sponsors of the podcast. And first, I want to thank Smith Agri-Service, which is a new partner of the podcast. If you've seen the QR codes on our screens throughout the episode, you can scan that to text them. But Smith Agri-Service is a family-owned independent realtor providing farmers in Missouri, Illinois, and Iowa with competitive pricing on Corteva, BASF, generic brand crop protection products, and Brant corn and soybean. So you can scan the QR code that's been on the screen for most of the episode. You can text the number on the screen right now, 202-988-1106, or email smithag@irtc.net. And they would love to get to tell you more about their products and how to hook you up with what they're doing. So again, text 202-988-1106 or email smithag@irtc.net to get a hold of Smith Agri-Service for all of your generic brand crop protection services, Corteva, BASF, Brant corn and soybean, all of those products. If that's what you're interested, check them out. Another sponsor of the podcast, and been a sponsor for a while now, so thanks 314, is 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles, located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet. Open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 on Saturdays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards. Have the newest selections of packs, boxes, and single cards of local stars or local players and stars around the league, including, let's see, another pack opening. So these are the kind of things you can get when you go to 314. Andrew's got a live pack opening for us today. Go ahead and rip it.
Yeah, maybe you'll get a future World Series champion in your pack, or maybe you won't. We'll see. But you'll definitely get him on the pack. There you go.
You'll definitely get him on the pack.
Oh. All right, Josh, you're going to have to do the dramatic reveal because I can't.
All right.
Oh.
Chris Archer. Okay. That's like a Rays one, too. Is this an old pack?
Yeah, this is old.
Oh, Gregory Soto. Interesting. I didn't realize that. Oh, it's upside down. It's Mike. Oh, Mike Bersu. I can't remember how to say it. He played for the Cubs for a little bit too. Jose Altuve. Okay.
Oh,
that's Blue Jays version. Wow.
Our favorite.
What a pull. Whit Merrifield for the Royals. Okay. Bo Bichette.
Oh, there's a lot of cards in here.
Zach Lothar. I honestly don't know that one. Minnesota.
Was that Shohei?
Meetup?
Kenta Maeda.
Oh, wow. Look at you. You got a Shohei card, Andrew. Cole, Flexen, Mats.
Oh, Mats. League leaders. What did they lead?
Oh, and wins.
The league in?
Wow.
Oh.
Must have been the top 3 in wins or something.
Okay. Steven Matz.
And Christian Yelich. Oh, wait, there's more. Oh, my gosh. So Jackson Cower. Shane Bieber. Kyle Seager. Okay. Yoan Moncada, I think. Wait, is that? I can't see. Oh, Yerman Mercedes. Okay.
There you go.
Jacob DeGrom. Okay. That's a nice pull at the end. Yeah, 2 Steven Matz in that pack. That's wild.
It's like the best card in the entire set.
Crazy. Well, yeah, go check out 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles for more cards like that. Again, some channel updates. Again, like and subscribe helps the channel a ton. So if you're listening right now or watching for the first time, subscribe. Again, it helps the channel a ton. We go live twice a week. We have Birds on the Farm, which is a great prospect podcast series with Kareem, who you'll have next episode dropping Thursday. We do Q&As on Fridays. So if you have specific Cardinals related questions you want us to address, you can go comment those on those Q&A episodes. And again, we'll have plenty of guests on throughout the offseason. I'm sure we'll get Jeff Jones on soon. Bernie Michaelis has been a great friend of the show. We'll be on again soon, I'm sure. We got a big repeat live stream that we're going to do in December again that we'll give some more info about, but really excited about how that could go this year. And then again, all the offseason talk, you can check that out here at Deal in the Card. So please check it out. Like and subscribe, share with someone. It's great. So I've got a bunch of notes here on our new buddy, Rob Cerfolio. I need to figure out exactly how to say his last name, but pretty sure that's correct. Andrew, I'll give a little bit of a rundown of some background, and then we can kind of go back and forth a little bit and how we felt about this hire. Rob was the assistant GM of player development and performance, or is being hired to become the assistant GM of player development and performance for the Cardinals. This is a Chaim Bloom hire. Yes, we do need to get Rob on for an interview. We'll see if that can happen. He's 32 years old, 9 years of experience at the Cleveland Guardians, director of player development for them since 2022. He's known as kind of a rising star around the league. And evidence of that is that multiple teams were after him for significant roles in their front office. Cardinals had to kind of give him a lucrative contract and this role to make it happen, to both lure him away from the Guardians and to get him not to go to other competing franchises. Over the last, really for as long as we've known the Guardians, but since Rob has been with them, and again, various roles, he didn't have his highest role until 2022. So he's only served that role for 3 years as their player development guy, but they've had a bottom 7 payroll since 2015 when Cerfolio came around. And during that time, they had 6 90-win seasons with the bottom 7 payroll, 1 100-win season. They've made a World Series appearance, 2 ALCS appearances, 5 division titles. They're the 4th best win percentage in all of baseball over that stretch. Young players like Stephen Kwan, Tanner Bibby, Gavin Williams, Cade Smith, Bo Naylor. Those are guys that they just drafted and developed, and it's just kind of scratching the surface. Again, they identify talent from other organizations like a David Fry, Kyle Manzardo, Manuel Clase. They've been consistently kind of underrated as a farm system, and Baseball America this year kind of acknowledged that and put them as a top 5 system in all of baseball because they just continuously pump out talent. Again, none of the guys I named earlier are superstars, but this is the organization that signed and developed Francisco Lindor and Jose Ramirez. Shane Bieber is another guy. Like, they've had some pretty elite talent come through there, even if they can't keep them because of their payroll. Other interesting note that I found the other day that I hadn't seen anyone say yet is that he was actually considered for their managerial gig this past offseason when Terry Francona stepped down. They ended up going with Stephen Vogt instead. Obviously, that was a great hire. For me, I don't think he was ever gonna actually become their manager, but what that communicates to me is that they thought so highly of him that they wanted to at least interview him and show them how much they value him. And maybe they thought there's a world where maybe he impressed and got the role. But obviously they wanted him in charge of their player development and they were really high on him for that. Andrew, I read you that kind of that background there. What are some of overall, how'd you feel about the hire when you heard it was announced? And then what are some things that you like about his profile? Or is there anything that concerns you?
Yeah, I really like that. The Cardinals are going outside of the organization to go get names for development that have done it in the past. Like Chaim Bloom, obviously, in charge of all of this. He was the one who was tasked with hiring this guy. And I'm glad that he got it done as quickly as he did. Like the World Series hasn't even started, and we've already got our guy. And like Cleveland, obviously bottom in payroll, but you saw where they got with the payroll that they did have. They were clearly outclassed by the Yankees in the ALCS, but it seems like a lot of these young players that they have arrived a little bit early. You had surprising players come out of nowhere, like Big Christmas. Like who knew that he was going to do that?
Yeah.
Hit that homer to at least keep them alive for another game. And like it's really exciting that the Cardinals are going after these developmental guys that have just done this in organizations that you want the Cardinals to model, right? Like Chaim Bloom came from the Rays. That's an organization that you want to model. The Guardians, another one that you want to model. Obviously, there's organizations like the Dodgers, like the Phillies that you also want to be like, right? Those are the teams that you're trying to beat in the National League, but you're not going to be running out those 300 million payrolls every year as much as we would like to see that happen, right? Please sign Juan Soto. But like one thing that does concern me is the ownership. It has nothing to do with his profile and everything to do with ownership. And they're bringing in all these guys from the Guardians and from the Rays and from wherever they're about to go later for external hires. Brought in some of Chaim's guys from the Red Sox. What concerns me is that they're planning on long-term being like bottom 10, bottom half in payroll. And that's just not right. The fans don't deserve that. Like Cardinal fans, aside from this year, have been coming to the ballpark, supporting the team more than pretty much any other fan base in baseball, right? Consistently like top 3. And the teams that you see ahead of them are like the Dodgers, who have a stadium that has 10,000 more seats. And it's like, okay, well, it's not really a fair comparison, right? Because they can just sell more tickets. That's just how that math ends up working out. And I don't know, like that's the one thing that does worry me about this. I mean, you've done more digging into this guy than I have, and I'm sure Kareem can tell us a lot more about him. But it just, from a surface level, it really excites me that they're going after external people instead of being like, oh, let's promote our developmental director from Double A and see what happens. And it's like someone we've never heard of, and
Yeah.
like that's great that they're going that direction. They recognize that they need to go outside the organization. I just don't know what it means long term for spending. That's not anybody's fault, other than ownership, and some of the rhetoric they've given us has been a little bit concerning.
Hmm. Yeah, and to your point, they have done a few internal promotions during this process. Like 4 or 5 were announced this week, but they were all like to lower. I mean, they're promotions. There were good things for them, but like these significant upper level front office roles so far are all going to external hires, which I think is really encouraging. I listed some pros and cons, or I don't really have a lot of cons, but I'll kind of get into what I'm thinking of. Like we just don't know, or what's hard to assess. But some of the pros I really liked. First of all, actually, really, this is going to sound really weird. I like that this is not from the Bloom tree. Bloom hired an external candidate that wasn't just someone he knew already. And I think that's really encouraging that we're getting away from the Cardinals promoting from within for these significant roles to a guy that just came in from outside the organization, and then he looked around the entire landscape of baseball and thought, who are the people that are most qualified for this role? He looked at organizations like the Cleveland Guardians, among, I'm sure, Boston, I'm sure Tampa, I'm sure LA, I'm sure he looked far and wide. Actually, I know he looked far and wide for this role among other roles, and he saw Cerfolio as a guy from another organization that I think, like, these guys around the league, they're looking, because he talked about in his opening press conference, Chaim Bloom, and I really enjoyed it. He's like, if you rest on your laurels when it comes to player development and getting ahead on the cutting edge of things, like, you fall behind. And so they're constantly competing with other organizations to get ahead of the game. And he saw what Cleveland was doing and he poached a guy from it. He didn't just go, well, who do I know from Tampa? Who do I know from Boston? I think that's a really encouraging sign that Bloom already is looking for guys he's not familiar with. I think that's a really good thing. And again, obviously the profile of what he brings to the table over Cerfolio, like, again, highly sought after. He's a guy that other organizations really liked, and I don't know what roles they were looking for, but it's probably similar to this. If I don't know if higher, it might have been harder to lure him away from a different role. Like, I don't doubt who's being offered a GM role anywhere, but maybe. And again, he was leaving a really good situation in Cleveland, that he was in a position in life where he didn't need to leave Cleveland unless the awesome job came forward. And that happened with St. Louis that lured him away from there. I like, this is a two-parter. The Cardinals have added a layer of authority to their front office. And so for an organization that's been understaffed on the major league coaching side, that's been understaffed player development wise, it's been understaffed when it comes to roaming coordinators and all that, they've also been kind of understaffed in the front office, where like a Gary LaRocque was filling multiple of these roles. And instead, Bloom is overseeing player development for this year, but then he will be Pobo. He's hired a guy to oversee player development and performance. And then that guy is now going to hire, as in Rob Cerfolio, going to hire two guys underneath him, one for farm director and one for performance. And so I like and then also Cerfolio is coming in here with authority already, not just in title, but Mosaic talked about right away. The first thing he's going to do is start interviewing candidates for those two roles. So I'm sure Bloom is going to have input on that. Mo might have input on that. But the fact that, like, they're already trusting this guy from the Guardians to come in and make some significant hires for the future of their player development tells me, again, they're willing to hear new ideas, new processes. Again, they're not like, we've seen this from Mo before. He kind of holds a tight grip to some of maybe the decision making, and that's being released to a guy third in command here, right? To hire people in the organization. I think that's a really encouraging thing. And then
you just made me had a revelation, by the way.
Go for it.
Mo actually really likes two-way players. You just put them all in the front office instead of on the field.
All right, I removed myself. I meant to remove you. Whatever.
So just all the wrong places for that. He just has his farm director also doing his like laundry or something. And it's like, okay, there you go.
We'll never not have a two-way comment on here, but that's okay.
I should ask him about that at Blogger Day next year. I'm sure he'll like that. I'll be like, you put all the two-way players in.
You might get his most honest answer, because he's like 2 months. He'll have 2 months left on the job, so he's like, I don't care what I say anymore. We've kind of seen that anyways. Last thing though, I really like that this is more evidence of significant turnover in the front office. And I remember there was not going to call out the Twitter account specifically, but there was one that kind of came at me recently.
From Back in the Future.
From back in, no, not that one actually. Because when the Gary LaRocque retirement was announced, I had some information and I said, hey, this is the first of a lot of change. Like, it's not just the only big change that's going to happen. And then when the press conference came out where they announced Chaim Bloom, they added me, were like, a lot of change, right? And I was like, not all that change is going to happen today. And the biggest change was Bloom. And then these changes started to happen. And what I mean by that is, you do have Mo leaving next year, which is a significant change. You have Bloom taking over, a significant change. You have Gary LaRocque retired. You have Matt Slater has stepped down. You have Michael Gersh reassigned. And this is just the beginning. Now you have Rob Cerfolio hired, and you have 2 new positions being created underneath him. That's 8 changes already to the front office that usually doesn't have any changes to it. That is significant turnover. That is significant change, and a lot of new voices coming in. The Gary LaRock side of it, again, that's player development centric, and so that one seems to be more of a pushing out. The Matt Slater side of it, I don't have a lot of info on that, but what I'm interpreting that as right now is that Slater's kind of looking for new opportunities because clearly this is not going to be his show in St. Louis. He's had chances to interview for GM jobs before in the past. Clearly, Bloom's going to keep bringing in some of his own guys. There's, I don't know. I think there's varying opinions out there of Slater. There's probably fans that just because he's been a part of the front office with Mo don't like him. There's significant reporting out there about Slater's work in the international market, specifically in Asia, creating relationships over there. One of the main reasons people, which it's crazy to think about looking back, but you talk to Derek Gould talking about the GM meetings, and I think also at the winter meetings, teams kept bringing up the Cardinals as a sleeper team for Yamamoto. Obviously, it didn't happen. Obviously, it really didn't come close to even happening other than that. But the reason teams are saying that is because of what Matt Slater had been doing over there. Matt Slater had also been doing a lot of work where it's like, would it have been shocking to see Imanaga come to St. Louis? No, like there was guys like that. Well, they messed up not bringing him in.
Yeah. They probably listened to me say it, and they were like, actually, we're going to back out of this deal we already signed.
But then also like amateur international wise, like a Won-Bin Cho, Lin. There's been different guys that have come through that are from Korea or well, who knows? But anyways, so there's evidence that Slater's done some really significant things over there, and I think he's a part of like a major part of scouting Michael Wacha. I think Alan Craig's a guy that's been brought up from Matt Slater. So like he's done some really good things over the years, but obviously he's been around for a long time. I think at this point it was probably time for him to go, but I don't see this as the who's pushed out, but more of, hey, there's not going to be more opportunity for you here, and so he's going to go pursue hopefully a significant role with another organization. So I see that all as pros of this hire, where again it's more evidence to me that they're bringing in the right people. They're bringing in a diversity of voices, so it's not just Bloom bringing in his guys, but it's Bloom bringing in leading candidates from around the game. And we're seeing more and more guys from the front office kind of move on a little bit. And not everyone, because not everyone needs to go. And I'm not saying that Gersh is bad at his job or Slater or LaRock or Mo. Like, it's just time for change. And these changes are happening. I think that should be encouraging to fans. The con side of it is that we just don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, when you do promote someone, like you're not getting Dave Dombrowski, right? Like you're not bringing in like an established track record. We know what this guy can do. You're bringing in young and upcoming talent, and it could strike big, or this could be too big of a role for Cerfolio. I doubt that. I'm really encouraged by it. And I also think like you're probably going to see him, Flores, Rodriguez, Bloom, the new GM that they hire next year, the farm director, the director of player performance. All of these guys are going to have an influence and say in what's happening. It's not just Mo. It's not just Bloom next year. There's going to be a diversity of voices, smart people in the room. They're going to be changing what baseball looks like in St. Louis. And these are the things I'm keeping my eye on the most right now, above payroll, above the coaching staff, above bringing back Goldie, even above the trades. I think this is more important. Andrew, I mean, do you agree? Do you like just that sentiment alone? Do you think these front office moves are the most significant things fans should be watching for right now? Or do you think it's maybe an overstatement?
I mean, I don't know if the casual fan is going to be like invested in exactly who is being brought in as in what role, and like I mean, obviously the casual fan isn't going to be watching a live stream on a Wednesday night, right? So like,
yeah, I mean more so like that even if they're not the moves they're looking for, that this is actually the most significant moves that are happening.
Yeah, I think it is the most significant thing because this organization, as it was like pretty clear from all the writing, the reporting that came out at the end of the season, the organization was kind of rotten to the core, right? Like there was just a lot of things that were not happening, that like basic things that weren't happening, that everyone except like the White Sox and the Angels were getting right. Like some of those like bottom of the barrel organizations that just don't invest anything into their player development. Like something that you would hear about the A's a lot of the time is that like the minor league players would be like the food they were getting fed was just absolutely garbage. And like, I don't know if it was that bad in the Cardinals organization, but they clearly were not investing enough into the young talent, and they needed to bring in more voices because the organization was just broken, right? Like that was pretty clear. And it was harsh. And even Chaim Bloom himself said it. Someone asked him at the press conference, it was like, hey, what do you think is the most important thing that needs to be changed? And he was like, everything, right? Like the whole organization needs to be fixed. So instead of being like, hey, how are we going to win next year? Which I think it's possible to still compete next year and still to put out a respectable product on the field. Like whether or not we expect them to make the playoffs is a completely different story. But like I'm not going to write them off like I will the White Sox. But that should be less of a focus than how do we make sure that we have future eras of Cardinal baseball like we did in the 2010s and the early 2000s, right? We need to make sure that the Cardinals are at the forefront of Major League Baseball because that's what they've always been and that's what they should continue to be. That's just how this team is meant to operate. And that's the expectation in the city. And like most people are not going to know who Rob Cerfolio is. Like I tried to make thumbnails and stuff like and graphics with him in it, and there's like 3 pictures of him on Google Images. Like no one really knows. Like fans aren't going to know who this guy is, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah, I agree. But I think,
yeah.
go ahead.
What should be most important is that this offseason and this year they bring in the right people. And like you don't know who these people are. Like most Cardinal fans haven't heard of Chaim Bloom because they haven't watched the end of your press conference. They don't even know who that is, right? Like, and that's fine. But as long as they know that the organization's getting better, that's how you keep faith, right? Like if you go out there with Mo again, and the fans who at least know Mo and don't like him, which is like most Cardinal fans at this point, probably you too. Like you probably take that water bottle and just spill it all out in the sink, right? Like. Like it's not like his favor with the city has gone away. And you see on opening day, they boo him, they boo DeWitt, and they boo Ollie. Ollie's guilty by association, but whatever. I hope they keep him. But that's a different. We can do a whole entire episode on Ollie. That conversation can wait. But as long as fans know that changes are being made in the front office, and that things will hopefully get better, and hopefully we get results back on the field as early as 2026 through the players that they draft and develop, then I think it should all be okay.
Totally. And I think to your point, like the casual fan might not even know who Bloom is till next year. The casual fan is probably never going to know the name Robert Cerfolio unless he becomes the GM or something, because some casual fans will know Michael Gersh. Some know Randy Flores. Like, again, if you're watching this, you're probably not a casual fan. If you're on Twitter talking about Cardinal baseball, you're probably not a casual fan. I mean, it depends, but like these names.
Well, I mean,
it depends. Yeah, as you say, it depends. It depends. But these names are the names that are going to shape the future of Cardinal baseball, even if they're not going to be in the headlines very often. And so I think this is the things I'm looking for, the things I'm monitoring the most above whether or not they keep Nolan Arenado, even whether or not they keep Ryan Helsley or not. Like, I mean, these are big rocks and they're probably the most public facing rocks right now. But again, I think I'm not trying to overstate either. I mean, because right now, it sounds like I am specifically the Robert Cerfolio hire. I'm talking about in general, the front office changes that are happening right now, not just him, but also the Bloom, also the 2 hires they're going to make. The Rock, Slater, Gersh, kind of, and Mo all kind of moving on at some point in various time frames. Like this is all significant stuff, and I think this is what fans really. Again, like I think the flashy versions of this is you moved on from Mo and Ollie, like that's what fans would have said. But the substance, I'm not saying those things couldn't have happened, but the substance is there. What's actually happening, even if it's not like clear to the naked eye, I guess, or to the casual eye, what's happening here. So I think this is really interesting stuff. But I do think in the next few weeks, we're going to start getting more clarity on some of those more public facing things. And I think Bill brings up a good point here. And it's something that we're going to have to talk about here soon is what do you think of Mo's comment about giving young players the playing time? And I mean, look around their roster. There's not actually a lot of older guys on it right now, right? Like it's actually pretty much a young roster. And so for him to talk about, they've had conversations with the veterans and they're going to go younger. Like what that tells me is I think they're open to moving any of them. Because I don't think they're going to move all of them. Like, I don't think we're going to see all
I think they're keeping Arenado just for their Hall of Famer quote on opening day. Just for that, because you're not going to get anything for him.
Yeah, but if he wants out, I think they're going to grant that.
Where's he going to play on LA?
I don't know. I mean, but if he wants out that bad, he'll have to expand his options.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, maybe LA will take him for nothing. I don't know.
Yeah, okay. I don't know, maybe.
But so, anyways, I do agree. Like, I don't think
Tommy
all
Edman?
of. Oh gosh, I don't think all of Nato, Gray, Contreras, Michaelis, Matz, Lynn, Gibson, Halsey is gone. That's true. But like, I don't think all of these guys will be gone. But I do think we're going to see some of these guys moved, and they're going to go in the youth direction, and it means significant trades will happen this offseason. And it'll be interesting as we get more info about what teams are interested, what's the market looking like. Some of that stuff won't come till more the winter meetings and the GM meetings, but like, this stuff is going to start happening here soon, and it does seem like we're going to see some. They're not a fire sale, but some selling moves this offseason, which will be really interesting. Well, also real quick, just to touch on a comment from Todd, we have a short. There's a question about there's a shortage of front office personnel. Seems like there's an overwhelming number of special assistants with McGee, Ewing, Molina. Well, we don't.
Does Molina even count?
Molina is there in title, but not in presence right now. If you just a really interesting exercise, go to the Baltimore Orioles staff directory, go to the Guardian staff directory, go to like any of these top organizations and look at that, and you'll see that there are like analytics departments that are huge, or to front offices where they have like multiple executive, like 4 or 5 GMs, and then underneath those GMs, they have guys that specify in those areas that they are overseeing. Like the Cardinals are, again, smaller front office, smaller coaching staff all around. So yeah. Anything else you want to touch on tonight, Andrew, before we hop off?
I think we have to talk about Tommy Edman. We've been dancing around it all, or I've been dancing around it.
Yeah.
People say I talk about the Dodgers too much, but then once Tommy Edman takes off, all everyone wants to talk about is the Dodgers. So, there you go.
I mean, my take is I just don't care. I mean, good for Tommy. But
yeah.
Wasn't a bad trade. It wasn't.
I mean, if you look at Twitter on that day, I remember everyone was pressing this. So, I feel like if you thought it was a good trade then, it's probably still a good trade.
And even the people who weren't pressing that, a lot of those people were like, what's the deal with Tommy Edman? Like, he's just been out the whole year, doesn't play, and he's not that good. He's overrated. And then he goes and does this for the Dodgers. I was like, how could you go up Tommy Edman? So, okay.
One exercise I want to do is would the Cardinals have made the playoffs if Tommy Edman was healthy the entire year?
No. Oh, the entire year. I
mean,
like
if Mo didn't like lie about like, oh, he's like, or like whatever, like he didn't like say, yeah, we expect him to be ready for opening day, and then he just.
Well, they expected him to be ready, and then he was.
Okay, but if he was ready for opening day and he was all good.
I mean, Tommy's not a 6-win player though.
Yeah, but like I don't know.
I mean, I guess the net negative that Scott gave you this year a little bit, but. And maybe they make different moves at the deadline if Tommy's healthy. I mean, they definitely have a better chance, but I think there's still a few games out. I don't know. Maybe his runners in scoring position stuff. Maybe
that's what I'm saying. He's really good at that. Like he had timely hitting. Like he didn't even have. He had the third highest OPS in the NLCS, but it's the timely hitting that won him the MVP.
Yeah, but it's also like such a small sample size, right? Like, what is he gonna do over 162 games versus?
He hit 2 homers off Shota Imanaga in 1 game. That's all I'm saying.
Well, there you go. Wait. Oh, yeah, when he was at the
Dodgers. Yeah.
I was like, when did he? Yeah. Anyways, I mean, again, I love Tommy Edman. I just thought like I'm not trying to call Tommy Edman redundant and like underestimating how good he was, but he wasn't
the
shortstop.
Also removes the need for Brandon Crawford. Because he's been playing short all postseason because Rojas has been hurt.
That's true. Yeah, so
there's no Brandon Crawford.
Well, actually, I don't know if that's true because the Cardinals, the way they were going to handle it was that they were going to make him the center fielder and not let him bounce around. So, and Siani didn't necessarily prove enough to make that happen, and Scott wasn't going to prove enough to make that happen either. But I think it's an interesting argument. They're closer.
You're on center when Wynn has a day off, and you're fine.
Yeah. They might have done that. I don't know. overall, I think people are overreacting to it, and it's just frustrating. And it's another ALCS MVP gotten away. But
I mean, this is the most predictable one. Like, you knew this was going to happen.
yeah, I also don't think like trade value this offseason, like obviously, like think like if again we're thinking about because like if Tommy Edman is still at the Cardinals, he's not an ALCS MVP right now. He doesn't even probably make the playoffs, and so we don't have the sample size. So like this sample size now might make him a little bit more valuable than Eric Fetty this offseason, maybe. But like I still think pound for pound, Eric Fetty's probably about as valuable as Tommy Edman. And again, most people at the deadline were like, "Wow, the Cardinals got a good deal here, trading away Tommy Edman for both." I mean, just for Eric Fetty would have been a win, but then for Eric Fetty and Fam, anyways. But I mean, the deal didn't work out. Obviously, like Fam.
If the Dodgers weren't involved in the trade, because the White Sox were willing to take Tommy Edman for whatever reason.
Well, they would have flipped him though. That was the whole point. Is they were going to flip him.
It?
Yeah, but I mean, it might not have been to the Dodgers, but
yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's odd.
But yeah, true. Like if they had kept him or they flipped him to the Phillies and the Phillies got knocked out early or something, like no one's talking about this right now. So, anyways, it's just like, I mean, Dylan Carlson can hit a double and people are like, whoa, you gave up Dylan Carlson. Which I mean, for Sean Armstrong, whatever, but like the Luke Weaver right now, people are complaining about it's a small portion. I don't see a lot of people doing it, but you brought this up. Like people complain about Luke Weaver, who got the Cardinals freaking Paul Goldschmidt. And like Austin Gomber, when he was pitching well at the beginning of the year, people were like, they gave up Austin Gomber for Nolan or not. And I think some of that stuff, just people being kind of annoying with it. But like, sometimes it's just like, okay, like, anyways, I pull my hair at some of this. I do.
Yeah. You need to spend less time on Twitter. Both of us.
Yeah, we do. Hey, honestly, lately I haven't been on a lot. Life's been good. So appreciate that. Well, I'll actually be gone for the next few episodes because I'll be in El Salvador. But Andrew and Sandy hold down the fort, and I think you guys are gonna have some fun guests on next week. So I think I'm gonna miss some good episodes. So
yeah,
we'll see. But appreciate all of you listening. By the time I'm back, hopefully there's some. I mean, I might miss most of the World Series, which actually really sucks. I know. I did not think about this, but oh well. I'm gonna have to try and keep up with it from Central America.
Ohtani's first World Series championship,
or Aaron Judge's. We'll see. Anyways, we appreciate the support as always. Like and subscribe helps the channel a ton. We'll be back, or Andrew will be back with Sandy on Sunday. Hopefully with the special guest as well. But yeah, as always, appreciate the support. We'll see you next time.